All right, listeners, ready for another deep dive. Today we're tackling a mind that, it's pretty intimidating, honestly, John von Neumann.
Yeah, definitely intimidating.
You sent in a ton of great stuff for this one, including parts of that, the Man from the Future biography.
By Ananyo Bhattacharya.
Right, yeah, him.
Oh.
So we're talking quantum mechanics, computers, nuclear weapons. It's like, how did one person do so much?
It really makes you think, like, what have I been doing with my life? But I think the common thread is von Neumann just saw things differently, like patterns and connections nobody else caught.
Yeah.
And he could move between these huge fields,
Yeah.
bringing fresh ideas and this crazy, powerful math wherever he went.
So we're not just listing achievements then. We're trying to get inside his head. How did von Neumann think?
Exactly. And it seems like it started really early. Like we're talking Budapest, Hungary, back in 1903. Little Johnny's having serious conversations with adults when he's 3 years old. Already a genius.
I mean, okay, privilege probably helped, but you've got to have the raw material too, right? His school, this minted gymnasium sounds pretty intense.
Oh yeah, the model high school. Imagine a school that actually wants you to think, not just memorize facts.
What a concept.
Right. They were all about problem solving, figuring things out for yourself.
Yeah.
Makes sense von Neumann got so good at finding those hidden connections later on.
And then his math teachers were basically like, yeah, this kid's too much for us. Let's get him university tutors.
While he's still in high school. And this is when things get really interesting. Because at the same time, there's this huge Yi crisis hitting the math world.
Existential math crisis. What's going on?
It's all about set theory and infinity. Georg Cantor had just blown everyone's mind, showing there are different sizes of infinity. But this led to paradoxes like Russell's paradox, basically saying the way they define sets could lead to contradictions.
Hey, so infinity comes in like small, medium, large. My brain's already hurting.
Right. It was a big deal. Some mathematicians, like the Intuitionist school, were saying, look, if you can't actually build it in a finite number of steps, it doesn't exist mathematically.
So like see it to believe it math.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But right in the middle of all this, you've got teenage von Neumann publishing papers on set theory that catch the eye of guys like David Hilbert, the biggest names in the field. This kid's diving headfirst into the deepest problems of math.
So prodigy, but also fearless, not afraid of the big questions. And from there, he jumps right into another revolution that's happening, quantum mechanics. We're talking the 1920s. Physicists are grappling with this bizarre world where particles act like waves, and it's all about probabilities.
And they've got two competing theories: Heisenberg's matrix mechanics and Schrödinger's wave mechanics. Both explain things, but they look completely different mathematically, like two groups speaking different languages trying to describe the same thing.
Oh, I bet there were some arguments.
Definitely. And that's where von Neumann comes in, again, with this crazy ability to see connections nobody else could. He proved that these two theories, despite looking totally different, were actually mathematically equivalent.
So he's like the ultimate translator, found the Rosetta Stone of quantum mechanics. But how? The sources mention something called Hilbert spaces.
Okay, so now we're getting into some mind-bending math. Imagine a graph, right? You've got your X and Y axes, you plot points. Now imagine a graph with infinite axes. That's a Hilbert space.
Okay, picturing that is making me dizzy. But why is this so important for quantum mechanics?
Because the math of quantum mechanics gets really complex, really fast. Hilbert space is a tool that's powerful enough to handle that complexity. It let von Neumann show that Heisenberg's matrices and Schrödinger's wave functions were just two different ways of describing the same underlying reality.
So not just translating, but unifying a whole field. That's huge. And his work on quantum mechanics goes even further, right? There's something about an impossibility proof.
Yeah, this one's still debated today, which shows how far ahead von Neumann was thinking. The question was, is the weirdness of quantum mechanics just because we don't have the whole picture yet? Are there hidden variables we can't see that actually determine everything?
Kind of like maybe there's a reason behind the seeming randomness, we just haven't found it.
Exactly. But von Neumann comes up with this mathematical proof that seemed to rule out hidden variables. He's saying, nope, the universe is fundamentally probabilistic, get used to it. And because it's von Neumann, people take him seriously.
So one proof basically shut down a whole area of research for decades. Talk about influence. But it wasn't the end of the story, right?
Even geniuses can be wrong, or at least not tell the whole story. A philosopher and mathematician named Grete Hermann, she pointed out flaws in von Neumann's proof back in the 1930s. She's basically saying, hold on, you're making some assumptions here that might not be true.
So she's brave enough to challenge von Neumann. That's impressive.
She's brilliant. But unfortunately, her critique was mostly ignored at the time.
Yeah.
It wasn't until the 1960s that John Stuart Bell, another physicist, rediscovered those flaws and basically reopened the debate about hidden variables.
So even when von Neumann was wrong, he was still shaping the direction of science.
That's wild. But then, as if math and quantum mechanics weren't enough, his life takes this dramatic turn towards nuclear weapons. Yeah, and this is where things get really complicated. The rise of Nazism is a major turning point. Von Neumann being Jewish, he was very aware of the threat. In fact, he even predicted the war and the potential for genocide years before it happened.
So this wasn't just some abstract intellectual exercise for him. It was personal. It was about survival.
Absolutely. And when he couldn't enlist in the U.S. Army because of bureaucratic reasons, he throws himself into the Manhattan Project, the top secret effort to build the atomic bomb. His expertise in math and physics was exactly what they needed.
Specifically for the implosion bomb design, right? This is where you use explosives to compress plutonium to create a nuclear explosion. Talk about high stakes.
It's a chilling thought, but von Neumann's contributions were key. He figured out how to use these things called explosive lenses to create a perfectly symmetrical implosion, which was crucial for the bomb to work. He was even present at the Trinity test, the first detonation of an atomic bomb.
It's hard to even imagine what that must have been like, to see the power of the atom unleashed, knowing you played a part in it. But even amidst all that, von Neumann was already looking ahead to the future, to the potential of computers.
It's like he saw computing as the next big problem to solve, a way to channel that wartime intensity into something potentially more constructive. And he wasn't just tinkering, he was fundamentally rethinking how computers worked.
Okay, so from bombs to bits, we were talking about the birth of the modern computer, and von Neumann's right there at the center of it. I'm picturing him walking into a room with one of those giant early computers, the ENIAC, with thousands of vacuum tubes.
Probably thinking, there's got to be a better way.
Right.
Because that's what he did. He saw the limitations of those early machines. They were basically giant calculators. You had to physically rewire them for every new task.
So not exactly user-friendly.
Not at all.
Yeah.
But von Neumann had this vision for a stored program computer. The idea was to store both the data and the instructions in memory, so you could just load different programs without rewiring the whole thing.
Wait a minute, that's how all computers work today, right?
Yeah.
He basically invented the blueprint for the computer I'm using right now.
His contribution was huge.
Yeah.
He wrote this document called the First Draft of a Report on the EDVAC, which laid out the architecture for this stored program computer. And the von Neumann architecture, as it's known, it includes a CPU memory input-output devices. It's the basis for everything from smartphones to supercomputers.
Mind blown. But the outline mentions some controversy around this report, something about a patent dispute.
Yeah, it gets a little messy. John Mauchly and J. Presper Eckert, the engineers who actually built the ENIC, they felt that von Neumann's report kind of downplayed their contributions. They wanted to patent their design.
So a clash between the hardware guys and the theoretical genius. I can see how that would get heated.
It definitely led to some tension. Von Neumann never said he was the only inventor, but he didn't really clarify things either. The dispute ended up in court, and the patent was denied, which meant that the basic principles of the stored program computer were free for anyone to use.
So in a way, that legal battle helped make computing more accessible. It's amazing to think about how that decision changed things. But von Neumann's vision for computers went beyond just building faster machines, right?
Oh, absolutely. He saw them as tools for scientific discovery, for understanding complex systems in ways that were impossible before. He even pioneered using computers for weather forecasting and climate modeling, which is crazy when you consider the computers back then.
So he's not just building the hardware. He's already imagining all the possibilities, the applications we take for granted today. But his story doesn't stop there. We've got game theory next, and I have to admit, I'm a little lost on how that connects to everything else. When I hear game theory, I think of like chess or poker.
That's a good place to start. But von Neumann saw something much deeper. He realized that the strategic thinking you use in games could be applied to all kinds of situations. Economics, politics, even war. It's about understanding how people act when their choices affect each other.
So it's like a mathematical way to analyze conflict and cooperation to figure out the best strategy when you're interacting with other people.
Exactly. And one of his biggest contributions was the minimax theorem. Imagine playing chess against a computer that never makes a mistake.
Yeah, I'd resign before the first move.
Right. But von Neumann's minimax theorem proves that even in that situation, there's a way to play where you guarantee the best possible outcome no matter what your opponent does. You're minimizing your maximum possible loss.
So even against a perfect opponent, there's a strategy that gives you the best chance. That's kind of reassuring.
It's a powerful idea. And it's not just chess. The Minimax theorem changed the way we think about strategy in all sorts of fields. It shows that even in situations where people have different goals, there can be a rational solution.
That's pretty profound when you think about it. And he didn't stop there, right? The biography mentions a collaboration with an economist named Oscar Morgenstern, which sounds like an unlikely pairing.
This is where the story gets interesting. Morgenstern was this eccentric guy who actually rode a horse through Princeton in a business suit. Apparently, he even claimed to be the grandson of Kaiser Wilhelm II and had a portrait of him in his house.
Okay, that's definitely not your average economist. How did these two even meet?
They met at the Nassau Club in Princeton. Morgenstern was giving a talk on business cycles, and von Neumann was in the audience, along with Niels Bohr, the famous physicist. Afterward, they all had tea and ended up talking for hours about games and the role of the observer in science.
So just a casual chat over tea with some of the greatest minds of the 20th century. I wish I could have been there for that.
Right. And this chance meeting led to a collaboration that changed the world. They wrote a book together, Theory of Games and Economic Behavior, which is considered the foundation of game theory.
What made this book so groundbreaking?
It went way beyond the math of games and explored how game theory could be applied to economics, politics, social science. One of their key innovations was the idea of utility theory, which is a way to quantify preferences and make rational decisions in situations where there's risk.
Okay, break that down for me. What do you mean by quantify preferences?
Think about it this way. Would you rather have $5 right now or a 50% chance of getting $15 later? Utility theory helps us model those choices. It assigns numbers to preferences, taking into account things like risk aversion and the potential payoffs.
So it's like putting a number on how much satisfaction you get from different choices. That makes sense, especially when you're dealing with complex decisions where there's uncertainty.
Exactly. And it was a revolutionary idea at the time. Morgenstern tells a story in the biography where von Neumann, after outlining this new theory, was basically like, wait, nobody saw this before. It seems obvious now, but it was a major breakthrough.
It's funny how the simplest ideas are sometimes the hardest to see until someone points them out. The theory of games and economic behavior wasn't just theoretical, right? It had real-world applications.
Oh yeah, for sure. It helped shape government policy economic decision-making. For example, the US government used game theory to design auctions for radio spectrum licenses, which made billions of dollars.
So from abstract mathematical theories to billion-dollar auctions, that's quite a range.
And game theory is still relevant today. It's used to understand everything from market competition to arms races to how social networks work. There's even a connection to AI, which makes sense when you think about it. AI systems are basically making strategic decisions based on data.
So von Neumann's work is still influencing how we build and interact with the most cutting-edge technologies today.
Absolutely. But there's one more fascinating area we need to explore, and this is where things get really mind-bending. We're talking about cellular automata and self-replicating machines.
Okay, now you've got my attention. Self-replicating machines sounds like science fiction. What was von Neumann up to here?
This is where his interest in computation and biology really comes together. Cellular automata are like simplified computer models of life. Imagine a grid of cells, each of which can be in a certain state. The states of these cells change over time based on a set of rules, kind of like how cells in a living organism interact with their neighbors.
So it's like a digital petri dish where you can watch complex patterns emerge from simple rules.
That's a great way to put it. And von Neumann was really interested in how these cellular automata could be used to model self-replication, the process where living organisms make copies of themselves. He actually designed a theoretical machine within the cellular automaton world, a machine that could build a copy of itself using instructions encoded on a tape.
So it's like a digital version of DNA, a blueprint for building a new machine.
Exactly. And this work was so far ahead of its time, it prefigured a lot of ideas that are being explored today in fields like robotics, nanotechnology, and even artificial life.
It's incredible how far ahead he was thinking. From the foundations of math to the atomic bomb to the modern computer, and now this exploration of self-replicating machines, it's almost overwhelming. But I have a feeling there's even more to this story, right? It's like we've already covered a whole lifetime of achievements, but there's still more to von Neumann, right? You mentioned something about him being aware of the potential dangers of technology. It's kind of a chilling thought given everything we've just talked about.
Yeah, you have this guy who helped create the atomic bomb, laid the foundation for modern computers, and explored the idea of self-replicating machines. It's like he was living in the future, and maybe he saw some things that worried him.
So did he have a change of heart later in life? Did he become some kind of tech skeptic?
It wasn't that simple. The sources suggest he was more of a pragmatic optimist. He understood that progress can't be stopped, but he was also aware of the potential downsides.
Well, yeah, it's one thing to theorize about self-replicating machines, but it's another to actually see the destructive power of technology firsthand, like he did with the atomic bomb.
There's this conversation mentioned in the biography between von Neumann and Stanislaw Ulam, another mathematician who worked on the Manhattan Project. They were talking about how fast technology was changing, and von Neumann used the term singularity to describe a point where things might change so rapidly that it could lead to unpredictable and potentially catastrophic consequences.
Hold on, singularity. That's a term we hear all the time now, especially when people talk about AI. It's almost like he predicted this whole debate about the future of humanity and the risks of super-intelligent machines.
He was definitely thinking about these things way before most people. And it wasn't just abstract speculation either. He wrote an article for Fortune magazine in 1955 called "Can We Survive Technology?" Pretty bold question to be asking back then.
So what was his answer? Did he have any solutions to this potential technological apocalypse?
Well, he didn't think it was inevitable. He believed that preventing disaster would require new political forms and procedures, new ways of managing these powerful new forces. But he also knew progress can't just be stopped. His advice was to use good judgment to be aware of the potential consequences of our choices.
That's definitely still relevant today. I mean, look around. We're surrounded by these powerful technologies that are changing the world faster than ever. AI, biotechnology, nanotechnology. It's hard to even keep up, let alone figure out where it's all going.
And that's exactly what von Neumann was warning us about. He was saying we can't just blindly embrace technology without thinking about the consequences. We need to be thoughtful, deliberate, and adaptable.
So it wasn't about rejecting technology, but about using it wisely. That's a message I think we can all get behind.
Absolutely. Von Neumann's life and work are a powerful reminder that scientific progress is a double-edged sword. It can be used for good or for bad. The choice is ultimately ours.
Well, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into the mind of John von Neumann. It's been an incredible journey, to say the least.
It's really hard to sum up a life this impactful in just a few words. But I think one takeaway is that von Neumann was more than just a brilliant mathematician or physicist. He was a visionary who understood the transformative power of technology, both its potential and its risks.
He was almost like a prophet, warning us about the potential dangers of progress, but also inspiring us to keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible. It's a legacy that continues to challenge and inspire us today.
And for you, listener, we hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity about John von Neumann and his amazing ideas. He was a truly exceptional individual, a real testament to the power of the human mind.
Thanks for joining us on this intellectual adventure. We'll be back next time with another deep dive into the world of fascinating ideas and the people behind them.